Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. How are you all doing? We are under a tornado warning. It seems like all our big shows, Jerry McKenzie, Dr. Mackus, now Gabrielle Clark, we get a weather warning. We had a flood, we had a fire, and now we have a tornado. Yeah, it's the beauty of living in Alberta. We get all the weather, but I think it's pretty interesting how the big shows are starting to line up with the major weather. Just so you know, we don't normally have earthquakes. So when Dr. Peter McCullough comes on, if we start getting earthquake warnings, something's up. Okay. But it's been a wonderful day. So thank you very much for joining me. If you caught the morning show, it was an excellent episode with Granny McKay as we're dealing with the Coots 4. Something's brewing. Something's brewing. I don't have any extra information. I went by what Granny was saying during the episode, but something's brewing. There's an application in. Who maybe they'll be able to get out. I don't know if the charges will be gone, but at least we can look at maybe some bail or something. But something's brewing. So I'm very excited about that. I've also reached out to a bunch of experts to come onto the episode. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I'm not sure of the days yet, but I have a gun expert who's going to come on. So he'll be able to look at the table of weapons that was presented by the RCMP. And he'll actually be able to take us through them and let us know, what kind of gun is that? What is that? That's used for birds. That's not even a weapon. We'll be able to do that kind of thing with us. So stick around for next week as we start to examine the evidence what they call the evidence, and we'll see what's actually going on. We may have a vet joining us as well, who has a lot of experience with a tactical and sitting down and looking at these things and say, well, could you have done anything with this? And pretty sure the answer is going to be slim to none. But yeah, we'll have somebody, a vet as well, to come in and explain to us tactically what this could have meant or didn't mean. We're looking at a lawyer or two to come in as well to explain to us some of the higher level legal stuff. So yeah, tune in next week, Monday through Thursday. We're going to get into the nitty gritty of the Coots 4. And then on Friday, we will meet some more of the friends and family. Now, you're all here for a really, really important conversation. Important. You all know that I'm running for office and I'm planning to get to the federal level, become an MP. And a lot of that is because of this gender ideology that's been creeping its way into Canada. A lot of this draconian stuff coming in from the Liberal Party and the tyranny that we've been seeing, especially towards Canadians when we protest. Did you even know that the Bill C-4 was passed with a unanimous consent? And that includes the Conservative Party. Have you read it? Have you read Bill C-4? It simply means if you have any interest of helping somebody go back to their birth gender, birth sex, you're breaking the law. It's okay for you to assist somebody to go away from their birth gender, birth sex, because it's written into the law as heterosexual and cisgender. So specifically a one-way road. So that's an incredibly scary thing. And if you remember when they were arguing this bill, it was around conversion therapy, but the way they were framing it was some children who felt that they were maybe gay were being violently assaulted in these church-led things in order to convert them through force back to heterosexuality. So that's what they framed it in and brought it in as. What it ended up doing was creating an entire class of citizens, mostly young people, who enter the transition stage and can't get out in Canada. They can't get out. And we heard that horrible story out of Alberta of Lois, who transitioned, regrets, can't get assistance. So now Lois is expected to be successful with his application for MAIDS. And for those Americans joining us today, MAIDS is medical assistance in dying. This is euthanasia. In Canada, we can fill out a form and our government will assist us on that. So we have some people who went through the trans process, regrets it, can't get back. We don't have the services. We don't even allow it via the law. So these are the kind of people that are very hurt by this. And these are the type of people and families that Gabs helps. And by the way, I defamed her a little bit. She's not a lawyer. She's not a lawyer, but boy, does she ever seem like it, because she's very active with the legal side of things. And if you look at her Twitter, it looks like a successful lawyer, but she's not. She's just very good at what she does, very smart, and very passionate about it. So on that note, I'm going to bring her in. She's here. We did the mic check. She came very early because she really wants to make sure this conversation happens and we can get through it. So thank you very much. I'm going to bring Gabs on. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing well. My kitty cat does not.
You warned me. You said the cat's might do it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tip my screen down a bit to try and bring my face down. Do you mind? Can you do that as well? Because your head's a little bit high.
Oh, okay. Is that better?
Oh, yeah, there you go. Yep, there we go. Because I don't want to cover your head with the name thing. Thank you very much, Gabs, for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's our pleasure. Truly is our pleasure. I couldn't get we have about 40 million people in Canada, and I couldn't get a single person to have this conversation with because they fear jail. Up here in Canada, this is the kind of thing that will put you into jail. And on that note, I just want to make a bit of a disclaimer to the audience. I'm not converting anybody. This is not a consultation for Canadians. Seek medical advice through your doctor. Don't come to a podcast from Alberta with a nearby tornado to get all your medical information. But we're here to have a conversation about the U.S. system, what is legal down there, and what is working down there for some people, and exactly how you got yourself involved in the U.S. system. So I'm going to ask you to make sure that we don't talk to Canadians and trying to convert them, because that would be very much against the law here in Canada. Not for you, but for me. So we're going to have a conversation without consulting. Sorry about that part. Unfortunately, I have to do that up here in Canada in order to protect myself from having conversations. This is the country we're in. So welcome to Canada. I'm aware that you haven't been here yet, but you are aware of us and you've heard from us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to kind of introduce yourself and give us a little bit of an intro on what you're working on mostly. And then we'll get into the story about your family and how you actually got, really dragged into this.
My name is Gabrielle Clark, and here in America, I filed the first federal lawsuit against woke indoctrination in the K through 12 education setting. So that was about CRT with my son. He was asked to list his identities, and then they attached the signifier of privileged or oppressed to those identities. We thought that was wrong, and we asked for relief. We were not granted that relief, so we filed a federal lawsuit. The case has since been resolved. My son was allowed to graduate from high school, and he's doing well. But while I was fighting for my son with CRT, my daughter was being socially transitioned into believing that she was a boy. I knew that was not true. As we have seen by the detransitioners, it's not always the case.
Right.
And so I created a program to help my daughter successfully desist. That program is called Affirming Reality, and it is being utilized throughout the world now with some degree of success. I speak with parents and coach them on how to parent their children into desistance. I'm not a therapist, and I don't do any kind of therapy. I talk to parents about parenting issues. That's it.
So you believe this is a parent issue. It kind of starts at home in order to have these conversations with your children and get involved with what's going on. It looks like you were very active as soon as you kind of saw some issues pop up.
Yes. The gender ideology as it is now is not just what would previously have been considered gender dysphoria. There is quite a lot of transgendering, and that has created detransitioners. That's created a mess with people who never really had gender dysphoria, or they had gender dysphoria, but they would have desisted given the time and the space to do so. And getting medicalized, messed up their bodies. So I recognized this early enough when my daughter started talking about having quote unquote top surgery. And I was just like, I'm never going to let you do that.
Good. Yep.
And so, I did have to devise a plan to help my daughter. I also help detransitioners find legal counsel so that they can get relief from the doctors who did this to them without giving them proper informed consent.
Right.
Yeah. A lot of doctors and medical professionals did not do their due diligence with their patients, and now quite a lot of people are regretting getting this done. And I
Yeah, we
try to
hear
help
that.
them.
Yeah, we hear that a lot up here as well, that the doctors or the system does not tell you about even the surgery, what's involved, the post-surgery, the mental health situations that it causes as well. And for example, for male to female bottom, like there's some serious surgery and mutilation, let's call it what it is, happening down there. And I'm pretty sure if they disclosed that, maybe showed it or talked about it more, there would be a lot more people thinking a lot harder about these kind of decisions. But here in Canada, they don't even mention that. It's just post-surgery that you start to learn about that. Is that kind of the same thing up there? And that's what you're fighting against these doctors for?
Well, that is one issue, but a lot of this stuff didn't even have they didn't even have the pictures or anything like that to even show.
Right.
It's a lot of it is so experimental that there wasn't enough information available at all before they started doing some of these things. Certainly not for children.
Oh,
And
wow.
even the medical stuff that they use, the medications and things that they use have been discontinued for other people because of the harms. And and experimenting on children with these same drugs, it should be criminal. Hopefully one day in America it will be.
Absolutely. Keep doing that fight. Now, which drugs are you talking about? We can get into which ones. Are they ones for sterilization? Are they hormones? Are they for transition? What kind of drugs are you referring to there?
Well, I'm not a doctor, so I couldn't even tell you all of that. I just,
Sure.
when they come to me and they tell me what happened, and I find them lawyers, and that's about as far as I take it. But I do know that, there are some drugs that were used for kind of chemical castration that are
Right.
being used as puberty blockers for children. And that's, I can't even imagine why in the world a child would need puberty blockers if there's nothing medically wrong with them. We don't treat other psychological symptoms with medication unless it's absolutely necessary. And in my view, a person needing to feel comfortable is not medically necessary. We can have talk therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy or whatever you want to call it to help these people feel embodied. We don't need to start giving them poisons and cutting off their body parts.
I like that word, feeling embodied, because that's what they should be feeling. And you're right. Like, this is a mental health issue, and it's pouring into the physical health side of things, and people are being allowed to do that. So there's something going on the mental health side, and they believe that a physical change is what's required. And look, I think you know this, and I think you talk about this a lot. A lot of this is not reversible. So once you make that decision, it's permanent on a lot, in a lot of ways. What I actually watched you in one of your videos, there was an interview that you did, and it was really touching, and how you focused in on the fact that they can lose sexual desire, sexual pleasure, that whole part of their sexual functionality can just shut down, and they'll never actually experience that part of life. Can you actually go into that a little bit more about how you've come across some people who've expressed this to you, and I guess this is now becoming more common knowledge that this is one of the things that will happen. Yeah, can we talk about that a bit? Because I think anybody listening to this may understand, like, well, if I go through surgery, I may change, but I won't be the same again.
There have been reports about children who receive puberty blockers prior to Tanner stage 2, that they will never be able to maintain any kind of normal sexual function or achieve orgasm. I have spoken with a few detransitioners that have atrophied penises and atrophied vaginas because when you take the wrong sex hormones, that's what happens to your body. It doesn't function naturally. And one of the young women that I spoke with, she had never had sex before this process. She was 17 when she started the medicalization, and so she will never have a normal sexual function because her vagina is only 1 inch deep, and there's no there's no sexual gratification. She had the fake phallus, all of it, skinned her arm, the whole thing, and now she has no sexual function at all. I mean, how if losing your sexual function, in my view, would be akin to losing your eyesight or
Yeah.
losing your sense of taste. You could live with it, yes, but could you imagine never being able to see again, or never being able to taste ice cream again? I mean, what would that life be like if you had one of your physical senses taken away?
Mhm.
Never hearing the sound of music again. And so I don't think that a lot of people really understand that losing sexual function as a young person and never even really understanding or knowing what it truly can mean, um, and understanding how it will affect you. And I don't think that a lot of people really understand what that would be like for a person.
Absolutely. I'm trying to imagine it, and you lose the intimacy, and this is how humans bond. And there's even another level to coming together as humans during the sexual encounter that is just gone. Like you wouldn't have. There's a lot of biology involved in that as well, to the body and to the mind. And I can't imagine not being able to establish that kind of a connection with somebody.
Well, yes, I
Mm.
mean the personal the personal experiences that they will not have is bad enough, but also to not be able to connect with a mate in that
Yeah.
way, not being able to connect with another human being in that way. How are you going to maintain a relationship with that as a problem? It is, I mean, there are people who do it. There are detransitioners who do it, but there are a lot of them who have talked about their inability to be able to find um, committed relationships because of what has happened to their bodies. And even in one instance, I've heard of a young woman who, because she had all of this happen when she was so very young, and the adverse reaction she's had to it, she looks like a 12-year-old kid
Right.
with no hair and no, I mean, no, she lost all her hair. And so she feels like anybody who tries to start a relationship with her, she ultimately finds out that there is a kind of fetishized
Right.
behavior with the I mean, can you imagine like what kind of person would be attracted to someone who is completely hairless with the body of a 12-year-old?
You're not wrong, and you attract the wrong people for sure. And that wasn't the path that that person wanted. I'm sure that person wanted to feel like they could be more attracted to someone else or feel like they could be in their skin. And then the complete opposite happened. Not only do they not have a lot of those feelings, like sexual feelings anymore, but they're unable to attract anybody that they would enjoy spending their time with. They end up finding themselves with people who are either fetishes, like you mentioned there, or who themselves are having so many issues that it's difficult for them to get into relationships. I don't want to use the word settle because it's more complicated than that. But what they would likely end up finding is a hard time finding, like you said, a mate or even a companion. Maybe there's no mating available to them anymore, but even the companionship is also muted or lost.
Yes. I mean, and obviously people do find connections and companionship even without those things, but it really does decrease the likelihood of being able to, and it causes a kind of self-consciousness that I don't think that anybody should have to experience if they don't have to.
No, that's horrible. So now we're talking about ruining their physical abilities, their sexual abilities, their emotional abilities, and now even intimate abilities with partners. I'm pretty sure they don't talk about that when they're going through the conversation. Because up here in Canada, as soon as you mention that you're interested, it's all affirming care towards it. There's no warnings. It's all affirming care. In fact, you're not allowed to do anything but affirming care, and that doesn't matter if you're doctor, nurse, or parent. Any one of those could be in trouble for not providing affirming care.
And that's one of the things that we have been really, really struggling with and trying to put a halt to in America. That should not be the standard of care. The gender affirming care model has been proven to be harmful. And in America, the doctors, their creed is first do no harm. And so the gender affirming care model is antithetical to that idea. So, I mean, the service that I provide in coaching parents whose children are identifying as non-binary or trans, that is should be the standard of care that we try to strive to, because helping your children feel comfortable in their skin is part of being a parent. We used to allow children to go through puberty so that they will come into their own in a self-discovery, right? And now that they're being told that they might be born in the wrong body and prevented from using their full life and their full body to discover that. And I think that shouldn't be the standard of care we have. There are therapists that are prevented from looking into other avenues aside from gender affirming care, doctors and medical professionals as well. But we're doing everything we can to try to change that. In the southeast portion of America, all of the southeastern states have banned gender affirming care, the gender affirming care model, as far as surgeries and medical treatments, puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones for children under 18 in some form or another. And hopefully, in my experience of what I've seen, I think that should be extended to people who are suffering from some sort of psychological condition as well, because I've run across too many people who were actually adults and they still feel like they got the wrong information, not enough information, or it was just plain encouraged, even though that wasn't a symptom, that wasn't a problem that they were having prior to. Two of the men that I spoken with were basically going through a midlife crisis when they were convinced that they were trans. One of them is 10 years into the process, and the other one took wrong sex hormones about a week after he had his first initial consultation, and has been suffering from reactions to the medication since then. And I just think that we should be learning more about this before we decide for people that this is the only possible way. Right. The false dichotomy that if you don't transition, you're going to commit suicide or attempt suicide is a gross misinterpretation of different studies, and there is no study that gives this definitively.
So it's just a talking point. They kind of twisted a few studies, and they use this against parents. Would you rather have a dead son or an alive daughter? I think is the kind of statement that we hear a lot of. And
Yes.
and for parents, that's a pretty shocking thing to put into your head. But up here, we have that in spades, because we actually have a system that will provide that to you. So in Canada, out of every 10 suicides, 8 of them are government supplied. 2 of them are, I guess we can call natural suicides. So in Canada, we don't even make that a barrier. We will assist you in that particular process if that's your decision too. So I'm sure that's not helping the numbers at all. And I'm sure that that's when it's someone's confused and they're having trouble and they can't find what they're looking for and they get into that system, that becomes an option up here in Canada. And that's horrible.
That is horrible. I mean, the euthanasia in and of itself is just, I mean, it's mind-boggling that that's even an option. But the kind of issues, the kind of problems that come from the statistics whenever something like that is implemented, we're also seeing it with crime. So crimes that were committed by men are now being committed by quote unquote women because trans women are also allowed to identify as women in statistics and in prisons. This is a serious safeguarding issue. It's a serious issue when it comes to statistics, so that the numbers are accurate, so that there can be funding given to women's shelters or domestic violence victims, those sort of things. The whole thing has turned our society topsy-turvy, and it's making a mess in every single avenue of our lives, and it shouldn't be. This shouldn't be the way.
Absolutely. And if you keep watching Canada, we're just ahead of you, and you guys are kind of heading in that direction. Like, we do a lot of things on a federal level where you do a lot of things on a state level, which is great because that allows the states to make their own decisions. But up here in Canada, a lot of it's on the federal level. For example, the bill C4 is a federal bill. So even on a province level, the province can't decide to do something. So we have those kind of troubles. So if you want to see where you guys might be in 10 or 20 years, you just look north. And yeah, we have late-term abortions coast to coast, any reason. We do gender abortions, and we do genetic abortions. People don't know that, but that is Canada. We absolutely do that because we have no laws against it whatsoever. So that allows it all to become available, and it is available. So we have those problems. We have the euthanasia. We have the gender affirming. We have laws against gender. What do you call it? You call it detransitioning, but there's another term that you used a couple of times now.
Desistance.
Thank you. So we have laws against even talking about that with a person here. So we are in a lot of trouble up here, no doubt. And this could be why that we're having a lot of young people telling their stories about transitioning and then regretting it immediately. And it's heartbreaking. Now, one story that we have up here in Alberta was a gentleman, when he was 14, he was watching Oprah, who glorified transitioning. And he said that's when he decided, because he was a little bit different, but that's when he decided that that's why he's different. So Oprah had an episode. He remembered that 4 years later, he signed up for the process, because here in Canada at 18 is when you can start it. It's a 4-year process, but they accelerated it for him to be 2 years, which is odd in Canada that we actually accelerate anything on healthcare. And at the age of 20, he had the bottom surgery done. And since then, it's been nothing but a horrific endeavor, because Canada will not support going back. We don't do that. In fact, if you want to do that, you can get yourself into trouble, and they encourage you to stick to that. That's the only time they will do gender affirming, is when you've transitioned to a new gender. Then they will affirm you on that one, but not back to a birth gender. So were you aware about Canada and like how rough it was? Because I reached out to you and I mentioned C4, and I was kind of showing you about C4, and you were like, "Wow, I didn't know that." Were you aware of some of this?
I did. I had heard about Lois, I think his name is.
Lois is correct. Yeah, in Alberta.
I had heard about that, but I did not know about what y'all call the law. So, I'm in the Twitter spaces all the time, and there are quite a few Canadians in there talking about some of the things that are going on in Canada. And, I speak with people from around the world, all over, in Europe and in Australia, talking about you know, some of the things that are going on in some of the other countries.
Mm-hmm.
So I did know the severity of the situation in Canada. And I mean, it is very similar in some states in America as well. Washington is very similar in a
Right.
lot of ways. Oregon, uh, California, the Pacific Northwest is very similar to they have some of the same laws that there are in Canada, and even laws that y'all don't have. We have, because we do govern ourselves by state. So in Washington now, if you want to transition and your parents are not okay with it, you can become emancipated, and I think that starts as early as 14. But the same thing in California, and I think they're getting ready to do it in Oregon as well. They may have already done it, but in Texas, I'm in Texas. We stopped
Yep.
gender affirming care in Texas for minors.
That's
And
amazing.
in Texas, we had at one time we had the most gender clinics in the country. And I think it's our freedom is a double-edged sword, right?
That's right.
So
Yep.
yeah, so we try to let live and let live. Unfortunately, we didn't realize that this was not living your best life, but it was experimentation and really child abuse in a lot of situations. So our laws are slow to realize what people are experiencing. And I think that the difference between America and Canada is that we don't always have to listen to somebody when they're talking. We can say what we want to say, and we can think how we want to think. And our freedom allows us to be able to have public discourse and have freedom of expression and freedom of thought and freedom of choice and all of those things. So we are not bound by just the way that the federal government dictates to us that we should live in most instances. And we have the Constitution too. So there's rights that we have that can't be infringed upon. And if they are, then you file a lawsuit like I did. So I hope that Canadians will start coming together more and fixing their federal government so that they're not under this draconian rule anymore.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of people that absolutely subscribe to that ideology because we need to. And I think what Canada was missing is we didn't have a 1776.
Right.
And that's when you guys got to rewrite your rules and establish your constitution the way you needed to. We didn't. We stayed with the monarchy, and we kind of pretended this whole sovereignty thing all the way to this point. So I don't know. Is it 1774 in Canada right now? 1775? I don't know. But we might have to rewrite some rules around here because that's what you guys did, right? You broke off from the monarchy. You got rid of the parliamentary system. You went to a republic. You had a constitution, and you put the power into the people instead of the federal level. We didn't do that. So that's kind of what's a little bit different than the two of us. We have Celsius, you have Fahrenheit, we have fake sovereignty, and you have an actual constitution. Subtle differences here. But yeah, that's something that a lot of people around here in Canada have been talking about, because that's what we kind of see historically as a major difference between our two countries when it came to the power of the people. And your people took it back. Our people kind of just hung out with the queen and kings for a while. And now we have a king again. So I think that might be where our two paths kind of changed and didn't kind of develop the same way. But it definitely left us in a really dangerous situation, because as you saw during some of the protesting up here in Canada, it's not like it is in the States. You guys can protest. Up here in Canada, we can only protest if the government approves that subject matter, which makes it very difficult to protest against the government. So yeah, actually, as an American, if you don't mind, you kind of watched some of the news from Canada, and you saw some of the stuff happening up here last year. What was your take on that as a country that really embodies the true nature of dissent and protest within your country?
Well, I mean, protests, even in America, are not without their problems. We have counter protesters, and we're not. I mean, we do get targeted by our government, uh, I mean, it does happen. It has happened.
Mhm.
I believe in using our legal system to fight back, and through lawfare, I've been able to advocate for myself and my children. But seeing what's going on in Canada as far as protesting is concerned, it just feels I feel viscerally um just sick when I see what happens if you try to speak out in Canada, and you're not allowed to. It feels wrong. It feels like
Mhm.
in 2023 that we shouldn't have that as an issue anywhere in the world. It feels to me like we're advanced enough as a civilization that we should be able to handle dissenting views and varying opinions without crushing the harbors of those opinions under your boot heel. I can't for the life of me understand how anyone could think that this is a better system of government than freedom. I hope one day, soon, Canadians will realize this as a nation and make the necessary changes to implement freedom in their country.
Yes, and could you come up and lead us? Could you want we can make you a leader? Because wow, that sounds wonderful. We would absolutely love that because this is what we do need. I do agree with you. It doesn't have to be violent or anything like that, but there's a lot of ways to work the system. Lawfare is one of them. Getting in there as candidates, getting in there as members, going in there and working on policies. It may take some time. It took some time to get us here, but I think we can take some time to get us out of it. But what we are missing up here in Canada is a passion to do that. We're about 80% compliant with the government up here, which makes it a large portion. So 4 out of 5 people are status quo, and 1 out of 5 is no, no, no. And you see it the way we see it. So I don't think we're the crazy ones up here that are pushing back on our government. I think we have a lot of support worldwide. It's just we've been so passive in this country for so long and so polite that a lot of people don't even question the government. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge. But I thank you because it's shows like this and the ability to do this that will help because we can wake some people up. What I'm going to actually do is talk a bit about the actual gender reversion, like what is involved in that, and how we can encourage people who may be thinking about this in the United States and not in Canada, what it might actually mean to them to go through that kind of process, and if they had that information, they might consider it.
Yes, so my coaching service for all the Americans that are watching this, for all the Americans that are watching this, is Affirming Reality at affirmingreality.com. So, and it really isn't it. I can't express to you enough how it is not like conversion therapy in any way, shape, or form. I
It
have
never
two
was in
gay
Canada
children.
either, by the way. It
Yeah,
never
I
was.
have two gay children, and even if when somebody asks me, is this like gay conversion therapy? No, it isn't. I'm bisexual myself. Like, I couldn't even imagine not having the freedom to do whatever it is that you want to do. So no, it's not that. It is a parenting program to help your child feel embodied in their natal sex. There's nothing wrong with the way that they were born. There is
Right.
no child born in the wrong body. And anybody who is experiencing gender dysphoria, the treatment for that should be to help them not feel dysphoric. Um, I'm not even 100% sure on what gender dysphoria is, because as far as my coaching practice is concerned, there aren't any parents that can really tell me that their child has experienced gender dysphoria in its interpretation as it is now. The majority of the people that I speak with, their children are transgendering.
Trendering,
They're
yeah.
yes, they're just going along with the narrative because they're experiencing the same kinds of body dysmorphia that all of us experience at the onset of puberty. So when we're in those tweens
Hmm.
and hair is growing weird in weird places, and you know what I mean, everything is starting to take shape, and you're just like, what in the world is happening? I don't want to do this. If someone is telling that child that if they don't like what's happening to their body, then obviously they're trans. That is it's cruel. it's
Hmm.
it's it's cruel. you know Explaining to children what is happening to their bodies and teaching them how to manage it and how to manage their feelings, how to cope with issues that might come up, and how to embrace their new body as they grow older is not it's not a bad thing. That's what we used to do. That's
Hmm.
why there's that's why there's not a lot of a huge number of trans people prior to all of this. And don't get me wrong, we've always had transsexuals.
Right.
Um, but even the transsexuals, the older transsexuals will say, this is not how it goes. This is not what we experienced growing up, for a lot of them. And even when they were experiencing gender dysphoria, I spoke with Buck Angel just a few weeks ago, and when I was speaking with Buck about it, it wasn't this euphoric, trans joy nonsense that they that they're trying to promote now. It was a very tumultuous experience, and it's not something that you aspire to. So, I really do try to help parents in America understand how to speak to their children and how to help their children feel comfortable and embodied in their natal sex.
Yeah, and let me just give you a story about Swift Current, Saskatchewan. So during Pride Month, a season or whatever it is now, I think it's a season here in Canada, so it's 3 months long now. During that, there was a group of students who put, yeah, I saw that eyebrow go up. The city of Toronto spent $2 billion on Pride season for 3 months this year. Yeah, yeah. But Swift Current, Saskatchewan, yeah. Yeah, you can visit here. Don't move here. Swift Current, Saskatchewan. A group of students got together during this Pride celebrations that is everywhere. There's rainbows and everything all over the school. They put up a poster that said "straight and proud," and what they did was they had a grayscale flag. So it was just various shades of gray, and then they signed it because they are straight and proud. They are identifying as straight and proud. Those children got pulled into the principal's office. The RCMP, which is our police force here in Canada, visited them, so the people with the guns, to explain to them how that's a hate crime, and if they do it again, we'll take it another step further. And these are students. These are kids who are identifying sexually as straight and proud, and now they're being told that that's a crime here in Canada. What do you think about that? Because that's where we're at. That's not where we're going. That's where we're at.
Do they understand if there's no straight people, there's no babies? I mean, I
There's a group of us that do understand how reproduction works properly.
I mean, if there's no straight, if there's no, there's a lot less babies that are going to be born if that's not the case. I don't understand if you can identify as anything
Mm-hmm.
and you can't identify as the norm. How is the abnormal normal then? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean,
What
it's
is
not even
norm now?
abnormal, atypical. I
Right.
don't even know how you. I mean, like, I mean, are we in a episode of the Matrix? I don't get how I have 5 children, and
Right.
I had those 5 children with straight sex every time, every single one of them.
Yeah.
So I don't understand what do they think, and what do they think the babies are going to come from? How do they think they're going to perpetuate the species if we're not
Baby thing.
allowed to be straight? If you're going to
Yeah.
be jailed for being straight?
Yeah, well, that's the irony, isn't it? The principal, all the police officers, they're all the products of a straight relationship, a straight
Right.
birth. They forgot that part because if they got their way, they wouldn't be here. It's basically the same argument with the abortion people because all of them are the results of a non-abortion choice. But yet here they are arguing that one too. Here in Canada, it's really bad. It's really bad. We don't have the ability to even talk about it. Up here, it's just no. Even the conservatives up here, they don't even push that issue. They don't talk about that issue. We have one party that pushed that issue, but they're very small and very new. But in Canada, yeah, we have fathers in jail in Canada because they refuse to use a pronoun that the mother of the children are pushing. We have that up here. Yeah. Yeah, that's so sorry. So hopefully, your Portlands and your Oregons and your Washingtons, that's kind of where it stops, and then you guys can start rolling that back a bit. But up in Canada, we got a lot of fighting to do. I'm going to move on to the consequences and challenges for the work that you're doing. So you kind of mentioned before the show that even Canadians have reached out, and they're not necessarily as friendly as the world likes to think we are. And some of them are even pushing at you and saying, hey, what you're doing is wrong. Why don't you take us through some of the challenges that you've been going through as you're doing these missions of yours?
Well, right now I'm having to fend off an email attack.
Oh, wow.
So I have quite a few trans rights activists that are sending me email bombs, and so I get a lot of junk email, thousands of junk emails. But
you must be over the target when you're doing that. You must be over the target. They know what you're doing.
You know what? I got that, and I was like, now that I am a member of this particular organization that I didn't apply to, I'm gonna send them my information so that they can, put me in the list and make sure they know what my coaching service offers, so that if they know anybody, they can give them my information.
Mm-hmm.
But I do get a lot of vitriol on Twitter, of course. And I think, there have been quite a few people to express to me that if I were in Canada, that I would be arrested. I'm not in Canada, I'm in Texas. So Texas is a very free place. And so, hey, look, Trudeau can come get me if he wants to. I don't know how that's going to work out for him, but I'm free. I'm going to stay free here in Texas. I do get, when I do protests and things like that, there are counter protests, and it has gotten pretty contentious, but I remain steadfast in my belief. And the parents who come to me, and are at their wits' end and don't know what to do. They know something is wrong. They know that it's not right, and they come to me for help. And, if I'm able to help them, when I'm able to help them, and they, tell me the results, I'll do it as long as I keep getting the results I'm getting.
That's great news. So you work a lot with parents. Do you also work with individuals who come back with remorse? And what's the usual age of the people you're working with? Are they younger, or are they just all ages?
So I don't work with any children. I don't consult with any children. My consultations are all with parents. Parents whose children are identifying as something other than their natal sex. As far as the detransitioners, because I am in the legal community, and because I do have ties to the legal community, I offered my services to find detransitioners who wanted to file a lawsuit or who wanted to file some sort of grievance with the medical boards of their states. I find them lawyers so that the lawyers can help them. I have made a lot of friends, and as far as that goes, I do try to be a good friend to the detransitioners that I've met over the past couple of years and listen to them and understand what it is that they're doing and what it is that motivates them and all of the problems that they have suffered in the course of this, nightmare of an ideology. So I spend all of my time doing everything I can to help as many parents as I can help their children who are socially transitioned to desist.
And you believe that that's a good place to do it is at home through the parents, because they still have the influence on the kids, and maybe they're just missing some of the tools and some of the things they need to have conversations with their own children. Because you're not trying to give them any force. This is all about having conversations. It's about talking with your children, understanding your children, listening to your children, and these are the kind of tools.
Yes, I mean, I offer them resources for therapy, and for different kinds of parenting techniques, things like that. But really, a lot of what we're seeing now, I think at one point it might have been, primarily caused by trauma or some sort of PTSD or something like that, and gender dysphoria, those kinds of things. But what we're seeing now is something wholly different. Teaching parents how to get their children out of the addiction of devices. We all are addicted to our phones. Even as adults, I'm totally addicted to my phone. And teaching them to help their children get out of the addicted mind so that they can hear them. A lot of these children have been watching TikToks and YouTubes and Instagrams and all of this, and they don't understand what's real and what's not. That's what Affirming Reality is all about. Helping them understand that first you have to get that cell phone out of your kid's hand so that they can even hear you, and make them understand that their life is not an episode on TV or a really long TikTok. That their life is valuable and it has meaning, and there are things that they need to do with themselves to help themselves feel comfortable in their own bodies, and that does not involve being in some sort of fantasy through their devices.
100%, the devices and what they're watching. So my son, he's 8, and he came up to us not too long ago because he's been paying attention to the backlash on Mr. Beast. We're not pushing much on him at all, but he had a question about why it doesn't seem like people are upset with Mr. Beast and his friend Chris. And we said, well, we had a quick conversation. He's not asking about himself. He's asking why people are upset about it. And we were trying to explain to him that some people believe that this is a thing, but it's not. He's just confused and he doesn't know really what he's doing. And our challenge isn't so much with what Chris is doing. Our challenge is it's in your entertainment. This is where you spend time and watch stuff. And these aren't the messages that need to be there for you. We're finding this in Sesame Street. We're finding this on Netflix children. We're finding this in YouTube children. We're finding this everywhere when it comes to children, whether it's a binary character all of a sudden or gay characters in Disney movies and that kind of stuff. What are parents to do now? Like, we are having trouble staying on top of it in the schools, but now it's everywhere on children's stations. Like, we take the time to say, these are children that are watching. We're going to subscribe to the children only version. And yet there's binary characters and there's gay characters in there as well. We're getting attacked like everywhere when it comes to the messaging. Of course, you're seeing that as well. But what are some of the things that you can advise parents to do to kind of counter and combat that?
Get outside. I mean, the oldies are the goodies, right? I mean, it's honestly getting back to basics. I think that a lot of parents really believed, like a lot of us, all of us really believe that advancement and progress is better. Not
Sure.
necessarily. We're seeing this with our food. We're seeing this with, with our behaviors. We're seeing it with our emotional stability.
Hmm.
So getting outside and touching grass, sometimes literally. I mean, like that's a funny saying that we all have heard on our social medias, but
Hmm.
it's the truth. Connect with nature. One of the ways to root yourself in reality is to literally go get grounded. Get out there and dig in the dirt. Shoot your kid with the water hose. Like do some of the things that you did when you were young and before there was a such thing as a PlayStation, before
Right.
there was a such thing as a YouTube. Those are, going out. I mean, my daughter is very, very fascinated with bugs and animals and
That's
insects, all
great.
of those things. She's 15 years old and she was riding a horse the other day, and it was one of her favorite things that she's ever done. And she talked to a goat for a good long while. So doing those kinds of things and teaching your children how to grow things, teaching them about all of the birds and nature in your area, that is not only going to help them understand the difference between real
Hmm.
and imaginary, but it is also going to create a bonding experience between you and your children that
And nature.
we don't really, yes, and nature that we took for granted. We have not progressed out of our humanity. We have not progressed past being animals. We have not progressed past nature. We still have to obey the laws of nature, and we still have to obey the laws of physics and gravity and and science. We have to obey those laws, and we have to teach our children that there are limitations, and no matter how much you can imagine it, it's still not going to happen. You're never going to be able to change your sex. You can create a facade, to mimic the aesthetic of a particular body part, but it is just a mimic. It's
Right.
not real. It's just surface area stuff. It's not real. You are I am female. From my
Hmm.
hair follicles down to my toenails, every single cell in my body is female. And there's nothing that I can imagine that is going to make it different. And I teach children that. I teach parents to teach their children that.
Well, it seems very basic. It sounds like we have to just go back to the basics. Like, where did we come from? And you were mentioning, connecting with nature, which is a bond that people can have with nature. And we were talking earlier about losing the bond in an emotional and sexual way with other people. So it
Yes.
seems like maybe one of the ways that this has been a challenge is all these bonds are being broken, even between parent and children. Children and nature, children with their sexuality, all these bonds are being broken through indoctrination and other ways. Do you think that this is just progress? That people are just progressing, or do you think this is agenda or narrative? Like there might be a little bit bigger of a push to usher us into this, because it doesn't feel like a natural progression. Because we went from like 5% confused to 20% confused in like 10 years, and those kind of numbers seem to be almost like it would be a designed or human involved in some way. What are your thoughts around that?
I think we're progressing backwards. I mean,
Devolving.
yes. And I won't even say devolving, because that seems like not the right. That doesn't seem like the right term.
Okay.
Progressing backwards is we're continuing. Like, okay, I remember when text messaging became a thing. And I remember all the boomers going, "What in the world do you want a text message for?"
You just call.
You just call, and they would say, we started out with Morse code and with, with the, what do they call it, little wire thing, the tapping thing. Started out with that sort of stuff. Why do you want to go back to that? Or started out with writing letters. Now you want to write a letter in your phone? Like how, and so, yeah, it is progress, right? It is progress, but we're progressing to a previously understood idea or concept that has been bastardized and is wrong. You know what I mean?
You're not wrong. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So this whole, we're, like I said, we're progressing backwards. Gender stereotypes don't have to mean that if you feel like you like trucks and you're a girl, then you must be a boy and you have to change your sex.
Right.
You don't have to obey gender stereotypes that way. Gender non-conforming children can do anything, and that's not a bad thing. That does not mean that they should change their sex to match their interests. That is paying attention to gender stereotypes and gender roles that we tried to get away from. And we tried to say, hey, look, I'm a girl, but I like working on cars. And that doesn't make me a man. That makes me a badass woman.
Or a woman that likes working on cars. As simple as that.
Yes. that doesn't make me a man. It makes me a badass. I'm a chick that digs cars. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that in order to right the ship, we're going to have to get back to the basics of what makes us human.
Absolutely. And you mentioned gender roles, which was cool, but there's another one, which is athletic abilities. And we have different sports for reasons. We have weight classes and we have gender classes, we have age classes, and we have ability classes. But these are all now being mixed up because of identity, gender identity. It's happening a little bit in Canada, but it's happening a lot in the States, where you have a lot of people who are stepping forward. We've got quite a few, even spokespersons for your beer and stuff like that. A lot of this is really getting confusing. What role do you think that played over the last 10 years or so in glorifying even sometimes the transition stuff? And what do you think can continue to be done to redirect that energy so that we can get back to sports for everybody instead of merging it all into one?
Well, I'm really disappointed in seeing how, something like women's sports have turned into this misogynistic idea of what a man feels he should be allowed to do.
Good point.
Yeah. Yes. I don't care about your fifis. Get your big body out of here. We're trying to swim. Get out of the pool. You know what I mean? So
we're trying to change, even like it's in the locker rooms.
Yes. And yes, the physical, that is what makes us different, right? The physicality makes us different. And that's why we have different sports. For me, I have been a very big advocate of trying to encourage our legislators to adopt definitions of male and female into our laws, so that our Title IX laws are respected according to sex, and so that all of the work that we've done as women over the course of the last 100 years will be respected on the basis of sex. Our heroes who fought for us to have these rights did not intend for us to regress into some sort of misogyny of men identifying as women because of their feelings, and that be more important than the physicality and the safety and the dignity of women. I for one have been very vocal about that. And I, even with the trans identifying people who have had full top and bottom surgeries, you go to the bathroom that is your natal sex. You go into the sport that is your natal sex. And if you don't want to, then tough. I should not be responsible for a man's feelings when he feels like he's a woman. You can't feel like you're a woman. You either are or you aren't. Being a woman is my birthright. You do not get to identify as a woman.
Absolutely. There's nothing you can say or do to change that in my mind either. Now, with sport, it is frustrating. It's frustrating to see a male go in there and beat a female in sport. In other places, it's dangerous. So prisons for female, you got homes for females, you got shelters for females where men are now entering and actually attacking and causing some harm to women in the safest places they should be. Now, that's even in Canada. So we actually do that. If you identify, they will let you go into a woman's safe zone. Now, I know in some places in the States, they're starting to crack down on that. Can you kind of talk a bit more about what's being done about that? Because I think that's we're getting to the bottom of the barrel now when it comes to harming women, where they can't even have safe spaces where they need to have them because there are some dangerous men out there. And the last thing they need is to be basically trapped with men who obviously have some sort of mental disability because they think they're women.
Yes. I spent time this past Christmas singing Christmas carols at a women's prison because we weren't allowed to go in. But there are men identifying as women living in and being housed in the women's prisons. And I work with some of the peer-to-peer advocates. One in particular, Women to Women here in America. One of the organizers is Amy Chikala, and she and I have gotten close over the past. Because listen, I wasn't always a good person. Yeah, I wasn't always a good person. In a previous life, I could have been one of their inmates, right?
Okay.
And so it speaks to me that these women are trapped in these prisons with men, and their safety is discarded for these men's feelings. And they won't let the women go into the men's prison because they recognize what a danger that would be. So you're not going to throw, you're not going to throw the baby out to the lions, but you're going to let the wolf into the hen house. How is that fair? How is that right? It should be, against human rights violations, in my view. And hopefully our legislators, every time we have an election, we will be able to bring that point home more and more so that our elected officials will get the hint that we are not going to put up with this anymore.
I think it should. Yeah, under international cruel and unusual punishments for prisoners, there's some international laws around that for prisoners, and I would believe that they're violating those right there, even because you do have to take care of prisoners. You may have killed somebody, may have done something bad, whatever, but there's still human rights and there's still international rights around that as well. So yeah, that's a growing problem as well. Now, we've seen some pictures of beauty pageants down in the States where that's right in the middle is a man surrounded by a whole bunch of smiling young ladies who are kind of enabling this behavior. They're not sitting there with a frown. They're not choosing to not be in the picture, and they're certainly not doing any other types of protests sometimes. So what would you say to some of the younger people who are enabling this behavior as well? For example, we've seen, I think, one swim meet where second, third, and fourth place got together and gave themselves a picture so they can be first, second, and third, because those are the true first, second, and third, and then they got punished. So is this kind of the deterrent to the young people to stand there and put on a fake smile and stand beside a man while you just lost the crown to him? Or are they actually indoctrinated themselves as well? Maybe they're not transitioning, but the indoctrination that they're under is the acceptance of it. So what do you think about that? Because I see too many pictures where women are standing beside a man smiling while he just took away the crown.
Well, I think that more people need to stop being so afraid of what, what's, so I do not care if anybody, you call me a TERF, call me a transphobe, call me a racist, call me whatever you
should hear
want
what they call me up in Edmonton, like out there. I get lots of names.
You can call me any name you want to, but I'm gonna tell it like it is, and I'm not gonna, if I were the one who had to deal with that, I would not be participating in that. I would encourage every young woman, and it is some of them are okay with it, and this is what makes it difficult, right? So let's say 20, there are 20 girls on a swim team, okay? And the top 4 are not okay with the man swimming next to them. The 4 behind them are. So if all 4 of those, yes. So if all 4 of those first ones quit, then you got a whole nother string that are okay with it, because they would rather take second, third, and fourth, and fifth than being ousted through elimination.
Right.
So this is one of the problems that I see as far as women go. And we don't see that kind of thing when it comes to men, right? You mentioned the beer. When men were not okay with their beer being represented by a trans identifying male, they quit buying en masse, and they didn't need a hashtag to do it either. They just didn't buy it. And the sales were affected immediately, and it caused a reaction immediately. Women's sports we're still having to fight because there are too many women who are okay with it or who won't speak up against it. And unfortunately, we also don't have enough men to protect the women when it's time to speak up, right? Because when we go out to speak, when we go out to do these protests, who do you think is coming to stop us? It's these men. It's the men. So it's not just a problem for the people involved. The whole of society needs to just make the conscious decision to say no to this stuff, and just say absolutely not. No, we're not participating. We're not doing it. And I think that more people are actually, starting to see that. You'll see more and more companies start to really rethink their marketing position on things, because they don't want to continue to have the backlash whenever there's children involved, or whenever there's some kind of risque advertisement or unacceptable advertisement, and they see that the whole of society is going, what in the world are you doing? I think that more people need to make their wishes known, and that includes in women's sports. We're starting to see legislation in our individual states, but every competition needs to be held to account if they have a man in a female competition, and they can, if they want to compete, then let them compete in the men's. If a woman is big and bad enough and she wants to compete in the men's, She can try.
That's never been an issue. We've had a female goalie in the NHL, so it's never been
Yes.
an issue. If you had the skills, you can go ahead and get in there. Now, my
Yeah.
chat keeps me honest, and they kept me really honest on one thing right here. I overlooked combat sport. So there's
Mhm.
men entering, UFC type of things where there's combat sport, and I just got a report that in Ontario there was a gentleman. I don't know if we'll call him a gentleman, but he played on a women's rugby team and severely injured 3 other women
Yes.
because he's a much larger
Right.
presence. Like, this is not even, we don't need to go to Fauci or anybody else to figure out the science. This is just dead wrong. So in combat sports too, there seems to be not stopping that. We had a report on a martial arts match where a man, identifying as a woman, broke the eye socket and shattered the skull of a woman.
Fallon
So
Fox.
yeah, there you go. And my chat kept me honest on that one because I kind of sidestep sport as just competitive, but there's also the combat sport where these are
Right.
happening as well.
Well,
Why is it that
he got beat up the other day by a real woman. But I mean, you know, I I and I don't understand. There's some aspects of this to me I don't understand, right? So I don't understand why, if there are weight classes in
exactly?
some sports, in these combat sports, then why are they allowing, why are they not allowing um for sex-based physicality? It
Well, they
just
did. They're just merging it now.
well, that's what I'm saying. They're not allowing
Yeah,
for the segregation of it. So it just doesn't feel they're ultimately going to eliminate female sports in the long run, if you do this. And this is one of the things that the radical feminists have been screeching about for the last few years, because they see how something that feminists have been fighting for so
right.
long is now going to be eliminated if we continue on this path. If I had my druthers, I would have a real man, go out for every female sport until this ends. Like, if you're a man like Zuby did, Zuby went, got the powerlifting, um medal or whatever it is in Britain. If that's what it takes, if it takes every man to go out for every female sport until this ends, until they decide to make rules against it, and everybody decides to stop this from happening. Because
Mhm.
I feel like I said, it's not just um the people who are participating. It's not just their problem. It's
Right.
society's problem. And everyone in society needs to take a role in trying to help fix it.
Yeah, and I think that we might be getting some headway though. So there's been some sport bodies associated with the Olympics who came down and said, no, we are actually going to put a distinction here, that we're not going to be doing that anymore. So we're starting to see some of that happen. So I'm sure you're optimistic about that and you're aware of some of those.
Yes, and I mean, I think what they said was is that if you experience male puberty, then you have to. But the the downside to that is that
You
now
encourage it sooner.
yes, you're
Yep.
encouraging children to transition. I don't know that. I think that that's a step in the right direction, I guess. But ultimately, we just need to recognize that men and women are physically different, and stop this facade and charade, that somehow you can feel female or feel male, and that's enough to identify and participate in sports and single sex spaces and all kinds of stuff like that for the opposite sex. It's not. There's reality and there's the
Right.
truth, and we should all be affirming reality, in my view.
100%, and that's why your program is around that, is affirming reality. Now when it comes to like men going into female prisons, you can kind of understand, like, they don't want to be around the men, they want to be around women, you can understand it. But when they go to uh the bathrooms and the other spaces for women, we've been doing that here for a long time. We've been pushing that for a long time. But now we also have a third option in here. So we have male, female, and then like mixed or something like that. Or they actually, I'm not even sure what they label it anymore. But there's a third option. Are we
Unison.
heading in? unisex or something. Are we heading in the right direction there, or should we? Because I'm even seeing more and more single bathrooms, so it's just a single private stall and there's no gender in it at all. Um, is that progress, or are we heading in the right direction where we have three options, or we have private options, or are we just kind of normalizing this entire thing, and that in itself is a bad idea, and we should just stick to the binary choices we've had all along?
Well, I'm not, I can't speak for what a business does with their, I mean, that's part of what America is all about, right? Being free. So,
Well, I'll refer to our government one sense. So the
right,
government is where they're doing it there. Maybe not the private business, but we have it at libraries, we have it at schools. So
right.
government institutions.
Well, I was in a wheelchair for several years. Okay.
Okay.
And there were plenty of places that I couldn't go because the bathroom was not an option. So I don't understand why we're creating another space where one didn't exist before. And I guarantee you there are more people who are special needs or wheelchair or families or breastfeeding mothers or whatever that had needed that space prior to any of this. And so, on one hand, I think that if you're going to be inclusive as far as people in wheelchairs or breastfeeding mothers, or what I mean, or families to use a facility so that they're not taking their sons into the women's bathroom or their daughters into the men's bathroom. Okay. But just for the sole purpose of accommodating for someone for someone who is making a decision about themselves and taking on this new identity through surgery or through their style of dress, to me it is accommodating for a choice, or accommodating for a kink, or accommodating for a mental disorder that should not be accommodated. We don't supply or we shouldn't be supplying assistance like this to people who are suffering from some sort of mental delusion.
And and sometimes that person suffering from it, but also sometimes the community is pushing it. So we've seen videos where there was a 13 or 14-year-old Desmond something, where they were doing something on stage, and
yes,
and this was on stage in front of a bunch of men in the crowd, and it looked like a stripper stage, really.
yes,
Topless or something. Now, if that was female doing the exact same thing, that's illegal. But because it's a boy who's identifying, it's completely allowed. How did that happen, and how is that happening?
Well, it's it's just like a lot of this stuff. We allow ourselves the freedom to parent our children, and we have personal freedoms. We in America, you're allowed to be bad parents. You're allowed to be a terrible parent. You're not allowed to be an abusive parent. But the idea behind abuse is varied, and it depends on what state you're in. What is considered abuse in Texas is not considered abuse in California, and vice versa. So something like Desmond is amazing. A lot of us really did believe in the idea that a child could be born in the wrong body because of brain chemistry.
Right.
Now we know more about what that actually means, and now we understand what the ramifications of that are. And I don't think that they really understood enough about that. It's the same with Jazz Jennings. Most people just did not understand enough about that. And we're seeing people who previously were okay with it and even supported it change their minds after years of watching the decline of our society because of it. If you asked somebody about social transition 5 years ago, they wouldn't even know what that word meant.
Yeah.
A lot of people still don't understand what it means. I said desistance a few times in this, in the time that we spent together. And even that is still, that word is still not, that's something that I usually have to explain.
Yeah.
Which, and desistance is something that happens. It's when your socially transitioned person stops their social transition. And
Okay.
social transition means that they're dressing as the opposite of their natal sex, using opposite pronouns, using a new name, that sort of thing. That's social transition. Medical transitioning means that you're taking medications. Surgical transition means that you had the surgeries. And, detransition is something that you would describe as somebody who stops taking the medicine, or, stops taking the medications. Desistance is what is referred to when someone stops social transition, when they stop the social, the outward appearance of being their something other than their natal sex. Okay. So all of those terminologies, we didn't have that when Desmond was amazing at 11. Desmond is amazing at 20 now, and it's a different situation, or 17, or whatever, however old he is. But when he was 11, we didn't know any of that stuff. Mm-hmm. But now we're seeing a lot of these, especially the young men who were transitioning as boys, and now they're grown up and they're growing up. We're seeing some severe traumatic behaviors and unhealthy behaviors, pornography, medical, severe medical problems and medical issues, just all kind, drug addictions, all of that stuff, alcohol addictions, that sort of thing. You never could have guessed that. Everybody thought that they were doing the right thing by helping these young people feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. But trying to change one's sex as a means of feeling comfortable should not have been an experiment on children, for sure.
Absolutely.
But for anybody,
Right. And my next concern is the age and what they're going after here. So now we start hearing the term groomers and indoctrination and sexualization of the children. And we even have groups called Gays Against Groomers. So in Canada, we have them as well, Gays Against Groomers Canada. So there's even organizations within that community who are saying, look, there's absolute limits to this. I don't like where this is headed. There's a term called MAPS, so minor attracted people, and it's starting to become more and more, at least put forward as something that needs to be normalized. That's very scary when you have a lot of that happening. And then companies like Disney, who are openly fighting against anything that's trying to stop that in the classroom, that's all very scary. Of course, you've been seeing that happen as well. Do you think this is an attack on the children for like perverted reasons, or is this just a bunch of people that's trying to transition these children and it has nothing to do with their own perversions?
Well, I mean, I think it's kind of like, that's just kind of like asking why the weather is the way it is. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, how do we know why the wind blows the way it does? Yes, there's probably some people who genuinely do want to help, and who genuinely do just want to be inclusive, or people who genuinely do want to make things easier for someone who is suffering from gender dysphoria.
So
right?
Really want to offer some therapy in some way to them.
Yes. I mean, I'm sure, yes, of course there's people who are doing that, but there's also this nefarious element as well.
Right.
You can't look at this and ignore the fact that the safeguarding and the boundaries are being eroded and that is creating a vacuum for predatory behavior. You know, if you go on to some of the porn sites, there's a niche of men in women's bathrooms recording them going to the bathroom. I mean, it is, and there is an element of predation,
right,
and exploitation with this. And yes, I do believe that it is there is an extreme element of this that is breaking down the boundaries so that adult child relationships are normalized. Adult child sexual relationships are normalized. And there is no universe where that should be okay. But there have been, and this has been going on for quite some time, there have been, different pushes for this over the years. But this particular forced teaming that we're experiencing with the LGBTQIA plus allyship alphabet soup nonsense, that has gotten by far more advanced and more I don't know, better understood as the potential for a real problem. Before, everybody just dismissed it out of hand, and now people are actually starting to kind of go, maybe. What? No. And I do think that, with ideas like drag kids and trans kids and all of that sort of thing, the push for maps and different sexual orientations as normal, furries and that sort of nonsense, all of that stuff is getting lumped into this. And that is certainly another reason why we should be hesitant and even putting a stop to quite a bit of this nonsense.
Yeah, 100%. And you mentioned one of the things that's quite annoying up here, which is the drag storytime hour stuff. So we have a video from Ottawa just a few days ago where there was a massive event where it looked like a couple hundred people there doing that. So the parents brought their kids there and the kids are participating. But outside, there were people recording because this is atrocious. This is all breaking the law and this is disgusting. So they're trying to record it. And they went and you see all the blinds start coming down.
Right.
So the people inside the building saw, oh, look, there's people watching. That's making some people uncomfortable. So let's go ahead and make this even more private with these children here.
Right.
That made a lot of people upset and very uncomfortable, because if it's not anything that you need to hide, then why are you hiding it?
Right.
And once again, we're now worrying about the performers' feelings when it comes to witnesses watching the event to make sure that the children are still safe. We are kind of losing control of that one up here in Canada. Now, are you guys down there doing any laws, or are you trying to? Because I think the challenge here may not be the performers, it may be the places where they're allowed to perform.
Right.
And then the parents who are bringing them there. So are there any pushes there to go after institutions that are letting Desmond up on stage and go after the people there that are showing up for these things to kind of support them?
In different states, there's different beliefs and different laws and different levels of acceptance about that sort of thing. So in Texas, we have tried. What we're trying to do here is to get those kinds of performances, because they're not drag shows of yesteryear, right? We're not talking about
original term, right? We keep changing all the terms, so
we're not talking about a bunch of Liza Minnelli impersonators, okay?
Right.
we're talking about drag strippers, right? Where there's thongs and all this here, and pasties and whatnot. You know what I mean? We're
and
talking
stuff
about,
coming off. Yep.
yes, and in various levels of undress, right? So, you know, that's in Texas, we're trying to get that labeled as something that needs to stay in a sexually oriented business, of which a child is not allowed. So
Correct.
a child, yes. So if you are a drag performer, then that it needs to remain in a sexual oriented business license building.
Mm-hmm.
Other than and children are not permitted in that building at during work hours. So that's the way that we're trying. But we just had pride. We had pride, and you're seeing on the street kids walking around. Now there's a debate about the difference between nudity and sex acts and all that stuff as it pertains to children being in the presence of, right? So I was up at Pork Fest, and at Pork Fest, that's a porcupine festival. It's a libertarian festival in New Hampshire, and they had the Naked Olympics, okay? And the Naked Olympics was basically just naked people running, and playing games and stuff. And there were children throughout the camp. That, even though I don't agree with it, I wouldn't exactly call that child abuse. You know what I'm saying?
It's not a sexualized display.
Yes, it's not. Yes, so it's not. The children are not allowed to participate. They're not. You know what I mean? They're around, but they're not. They're not sitting there watching it. That sort of thing. But when you're talking about a pride event where there are men in thongs and chokers being led around on a leash, rubbing up against some toddler, in my that's no, that's a hard no. Or actual sex acts being performed in full view of children,
right?
That's a hard no. No, we shouldn't be allowing that. And I think that is the kind of thing that we already have laws for public nudity and sex acts in public. If we would just enforce those laws, then we wouldn't, then this would cease to be an issue. But because we don't, because we're trying to be inclusive, or because our police officers, our law enforcement, doesn't know how to handle the situation. If it were up to me, there would be no more pride. There would be no more pride parades. There would be no more drag shows, because it's just like, look, this has gotten completely and totally out of hand. And mind you, I lived in Las Vegas for 15 years. I used to love going to drag shows. Like, it was fun. You know what I mean? Like, it was fun, but it's adult fun, not fun for, it's that we don't need to involve children in all of the fun things that adults experience. Adults experience a lot of things that children that is not age appropriate for children. Correct. And stuff like drag shows and pride and stuff like that is part of that.
100%. And up here in Canada, of course, we have adult establishments. You can't go into the liquor store, and we even have marijuana stores up here. Kids can't go in those. So we have designated adult only locations. We'll call that adult only. But now it seems like we need to also designate children only, where adult stuff cannot go there, like schools and libraries. But unfortunately, in Calgary, there's a law that says if there's, and this is weird how they wrote this, but if there's a drag story time event happening, that is no protesting allowed within 100 meters of that facility. So if you protest within 99 meters of a drag show, you can say not for kids, and that's all the sign says, you'd be arrested.
There, you know what? That's not a problem in Texas anymore, because this is the reason why it's not a problem in Texas anymore is because one of the things that they realized is that some of the people who were promoting these drag queen story hour events were in fact convicted sex offenders. So that put the kibosh on that nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a convicted sex offender and you want to participate in a drag queen story hour where you have a child sitting on your lap while you read to them, that's a like that is a red flag like nobody's business. We don't need to keep giving people opportunities to break down the safeguarding measures that we have in place. Our schools are supposed to be safe for our children. They cannot be safe if we continue to push the envelope of sexualization. That is a safeguarding issue. That is a boundary issue, and we shouldn't be. We should all be trying to protect the innocence of our children.
Right. And some people try. So, and you have it there as well. You have advocates and people trying. So they go to the school boards and they protest, or they have a say, or they go up to the microphone and they read from the book, which is too lewd to read there, but yet it's in the library for the kids. We see those all the time. Yeah. Now up here in Canada, you're starting to get into more trouble if you do that. So if you're a parent that goes out there and expresses that, that's starting to become hate speech up here in Canada, because it's actively going against a particular group that's protected. And that in Canada, that group is protected under our human rights laws. So we are kind of hands tied up here for that particular issue. Now, down in the States, that's not so much of an issue. But now I want to talk to you a bit about the future advocacy. So you don't actually go and protest as much anymore. You spoke to me a bit on the costs, both social, economical, and time. There's lots of cost to protesting, and you do a lot more counseling to parents. Where do you see this going? Do you see this trending that you're going to be out of business soon? Because frankly, that would be a good thing, wouldn't it?
I hope so.
Or are you going to be in business for a long time?
I hope that I can train enough coaches to open up their own businesses. And I hope that I can train coaches in every state in America to use my method so that they can help all of the children in their states and put me completely out of business. Great. I want to never have to do this ever again. I want to be unemployed. As far as coaching assistance goes, I will hope that enough people are starting to wake up to the fact that this is not this is even social transitioning. People think social transitioning is just, oh, well, they wear, clothes and they use pronouns. I mean, who cares about that? It's not that bad. No, there's also introductions into promiscuity. There's self-harm. There's the breakdown of safeguarding measures that leads to predation. There's much more that goes into social transitioning than just pronouns and funny clothes. Mm-hmm. So I hope that in the future I get put out of business.
Yeah, I'm hoping to too. Yes, because that would be great. That means we've solved that problem. I don't want you to describe this next word. I don't want you to go into any detail. But do you know what fletching is? Okay. Now, the only reason why I brought that up is so do the children in Saskatchewan, because that's in their books here, and that plus a dozen other particular words just like that. Fully described, fully explained. I didn't know what that word was until this news came up that this book was there in the schools. I had no clue, because why would I? This is not a normal thing that you would learn. I now know what it is. It's horrible, but so do a bunch of kids in Saskatchewan. And it's the same place where if you say straight and proud, you're in trouble.
Right.
Look, this is getting really ridiculous now. Tackling one of the things you suggest or you talked about, like how can we stop these pride parades? Have a straight one, and they'll make it illegal. If there's a straight one, that all of a sudden this stuff would be illegal, and it would start defining it. I don't think it'd be that simple. I think that would be considered a hate parade. But
Right.
what could be some countermeasures that we could logically take that might actually push that envelope a bit, so that we can start defining what lewd is and what obscene is? In Canada, there's a gentleman in Ontario who wore huge prosthetic breasts,
I
like
saw
to the
that.
floor. Right. Now, there's a lot of people that believe that he is not doing that because that's his feelings. He's doing that to cause them to define obscene, so that we can
Right.
start having limits, because there's no limits.
Right.
Um, do you think that might be a way to kind of protest, kind of get them to define limits? Or is there another way to maybe kind of push this forward?
So I would say no to that. Like, I would say, don't do that. Because the whole idea is to not hurt the children, right? Like, the
Correct.
whole idea is to not traumatize, to keep the children from being traumatized. You don't stop traumatizing the children by traumatizing them. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
even though it's a troll, even if it's a troll, how many of the young boys that had to take his class were affected by that? Because it
Well,
doesn't matter.
it's my understanding the class knows. They know what he's up to, and they support
Even
him.
still, I mean, even still, are the young boys telling you about what they're doing in their rooms at night? You know, I'm
No,
just
but
you understand what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
so,
it shouldn't be in the school, is what we think
right.
on this side. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I and you know, I get parents that ask me all the time, should I just show them the mutilated body? No, don't traumatize your child. There's
Good.
a better way. you can you can teach your children about safety without traumatizing them.
Right.
You can change the way that we operate in society without first traumatizing the children.
Right.
Because
You can talk about birth without showing it.
yes, right, you can talk about those things, you can teach things without the trauma for society. And I would say this too, even with when it comes to showing those pictures and stuff like that to other adults, at what point does it become exploitation?
Right.
So those are people, those are victims. They're victims of what should be a crime. They're victims of mutilation. So why
Mhm.
are we going around showing it in this outrage porn? It's wrong, and we shouldn't be doing it. There's other things that we can do, but we're too afraid to do, right?
Like what?
So I mean, we had a civil rights leader here named John Lewis, and he said, get into good trouble.
Okay.
We have,
In
if
America, what would be good
yes,
trouble? Because we don't do this in Canada. So what
good
would be good
trouble would
trouble in
be,
Canada?
back then it was going and being a part of a sit-in.
Okay.
You go in there, you sit in a place, you sit down, you sing songs, you might get arrested. You know what I mean? You probably would get arrested, but you take that hit for the change of society. And that's something that in America, the what do you call it, civil disobedience has
Right.
been a long-standing tradition in our country. So that civil disobedience, yes, it might get you arrested, and it might get you attacked, but we engage in it because it works as
Mhm.
as a way to wake people up and bring awareness to an issue. And so I think that more people need to stop being as passive as they had been and start engaging in a little good trouble. It's the way that the other side has done for years and has
Mhm.
been able to push us and bully us into the place that we are now.
Well, we went through that, so we tried that. We had bouncy castles, we had hot tubs, and we had honking. All they were doing was violating parking ordinance by being there for too long. That was a civil disobedience. It was nonviolent and it was peaceful. What Canada ended up doing was declaring that a national emergency because of the economic impact from the global investment market.
Do it 50 more times.
I like you. I like you.
Do it
Because
50 more times.
did
And
you hear
see
that,
how.
Canada?
And if your government can declare a national emergency 50 times in a row, 50 weekends in a row because of your civil disobedience, the world is going to see that. More Canadians are going to see that. I mean, I can't, when I watched on television and I saw what was going on, I couldn't believe that your government was taking it. But what I really couldn't believe was that you stopped.
Yeah. Well, we had to. It was very violent. I'm not sure if you got those pictures on your news. Only the people with cameras on the street got it, but it was very violent. Nobody was charged here in Canada. What they ended up doing was just beat them, drag them away, and dump them in the snow outside of town. That's what they did.
That's what happened during the civil rights era.
Right. So you say just walk back and sit back down.
Yeah.
Keep doing that every week.
During the civil rights movement, that's what our forebears had to do.
Mm-hmm.
They got hosed with fire hoses. Some of them even got beaten to death. But we got our civil rights though.
That's right. Like, you got to stick it out. You got to fight all the way through is what you're saying, because that worked. We didn't. Maybe we shouldn't do it in February this time. It was too cold. It actually gave them an advantage. It was difficult to stay there. But
maybe make some better arrangements for August.
For August, for sure. Well, Canada Day is coming up tomorrow, actually. So maybe we'll start waking up and taking back some of our rights. But thank you so much for your time. We're right on time here. Was there anything else that you want to say to the American parents out there who want to reach out to you? Maybe they want to get your services, or maybe they want to be a coach, or somebody wants to be a coach for one of their states, not Canada. And how could they go ahead and reach you and maybe get that process started?
Yes, you can find me on Twitter at GabsClark5. My DMs are always open if you want my help or if you want to help. And you can also access my website at affirmingreality.com for any American whose child is suffering from rapid onset gender dysphoria, or transgendering, as I like to call it. And you need to get coaching services to help your child successfully desist. You can find me at affirmingreality.com in America.
Thank you so much. God bless you. You go Texas, and I totally see that double standard, not standard, but the double-edged sword where you want your freedom and independence, but that also means some people have freedom and independence that could be rough. We have some of that up here as well. But thank you so much. We have Canada Day tomorrow. We're going to celebrate for a bit, and then we're going to get back to work because we got a lot of work to do up here in Canada. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. Actually, to talk to the Americans watching.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. And you take care, and I hope to see you online, and we'll share your information to the Americans because I do have some Americans that watch this show.
Thank you.
You take care. Thank you very much. And say hi to your cat and to the boyfriend. I saw him leave, but say, hey, Canada says hi.
Okay, I'll let him know.
Okay, bye-bye. There we go. Well, that is Gabrielle, and she is doing a lot of good work for Americans. Keep that in mind, everybody. This is advice for Americans, not Canadians. We can't do this here. And I really like her idea of going ahead and spreading the ability to coach, teaching people how to become coaches. This is a great way for one in each state, many each state, and then they can assist parents. And I think her approach is a very good one. Work with the parents on how to understand how to talk to your kids. And I actually really like the fact that she doesn't think using traumatic means to do it is a good idea. So don't show the gruesome surgery. Don't show the arm opened up for the skin graft and stuff. Talk to them. Just talk to them. And I think that's probably the correct way to do it. That's how they're getting into trouble to begin with. It's other people are talking to them, the teachers, other people that come into the schools to propagate those messages. So other people are talking to your children. TV shows, Disney. I actually wanted to mention that Orange is the New Black kind of normalized males inside of female prisons. So we had those kind of cultural things happen. Talk to your kids. I talk to mine, and they understand very well. It's actually very encouraging on how mature the conversation was, because his response was, "I just want to be a kid. I don't know why they're putting this stuff in front of me." So keep talking to your kids. It's going to help you a lot, and it's going to work. But thank you very much for joining me on this one. This was a different type because we didn't have a Canadian and we couldn't get a Canadian. This particular conversation wouldn't be able to happen here in Canada for Canadians. And I think is a problem. And if you didn't catch it, the entire House, unanimous, passed C4. So it's not even conservatively supported as something that we shouldn't be doing. But look, this is the fight we fight, and we're going to do it again. Tomorrow, come celebrate with me, though. So tomorrow for 10 hours, I'll be starting at noon Mountain Time, which is 2 p.m. Eastern, and I'll be going all the way to 10 p.m. Mountain Time, which will be midnight Eastern. We're going to have a whole bunch of people just pop up and say hi. Some of them are going to stay here for a little bit. Some of them are going to stay here for a while. We're going to have a bit of a co-host, and we're going to have some surprise guests. I sent this link out to so many people, and if half of them show up, you're going to love it. I got some great confirmations of people that are going to show up, so do come. You're going to enjoy it. There's going to be leaders. There's going to be music. There's going to be conversation about work and advocacy. There's going to be a lot of good stuff to talk about. There may even be a celebrity or two who pops in to say hi. So do show up and enjoy the 10-hour special. Little old me is going to have to find ways to eat and keep hydrated for all of that. But I'll do that for you, Canada, because these conversations are very, very important. And I enjoy having them. We'll have a lot of people who have podcasts and shows on, so they'll introduce their shows to you, because I think this is a new type of news. This is a new type of media. This is Canadian media now, where Canadians report to Canadians without anybody in between. And you'll be getting a lot of that. So I'd like to expose you to a whole bunch of other podcasters out there. And that's kind of the goal for Canada Day, is to unify through conversation. So you'll be hearing from a whole bunch of different people who have shows, and they all vary. Some of them are very energetic, and some of them are calmer, and some of them are really pushing for change, and some of them are working out problems that they're trying to find solutions for. So there's going to be a big collection of different types of shows to select from, and find a couple that you like. That will be great. And bring your friends, because it's going to be a good time. We're not going to get too political. We're not there to beat the drums on anything. We're there to celebrate Canadians and introduce you to a bunch of people who are working hard for you. You can find us live on Rumble, Odyssey, Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube again. We'll stay on there hopefully for a little bit longer this time. LinkedIn, and we're also on Getter. So you can find us on 8 different platforms, live streaming for the entire 10 hours. Please don't forget to subscribe. Go ahead and give us a like, and please share as well. This all helps the algorithm and helps get the reach out there. So please go ahead and give us a little thumbs up there, especially in Facebook. It helps. Like it, go ahead and clip it. You can make a clip on YouTube just by selecting where you're going to go and drop it. Or you can actually make 1-minute long clips as well through YouTube. If you want to download it and make clips, that's fine too. Join our Discord if you want to be part of the solution. We're working on quite a few things. The Coots 4 is the current project that we're working on, but we're also keeping track of the news, and we're not letting people get away with too much. So thank you all very much. This was an excellent episode. It's a good way to end up Friday. We got to talk about how, there's some people really working hard around the world to save our children, to protect our children, and to help our children. And I think that she's got a good approach. You go through the parents. It's really the parents' job. John says, Happy Canada Day to the Yellowhead Yacht Club and Plaid family. Absolutely, John. Love your questions. I love the fact that you keep coming here. You're a pretty stable supporter and subscriber. So thank you very much, John. I hope you come by tomorrow. And if you want to get on, just hit me up through an email, jason@yellowhead.vote, and I'll do my best to be checking that throughout the day and sending back links to people that want to come on the show. Great way to end the month. Yes, that's exactly the point here. It was the last day of that month, and I thought it was appropriate to have this particular conversation on this particular day. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you were able to get some information, especially if you're American, because if you're Canadian, don't touch this stuff. But if you're an American, I hope you got some information. You can reach out to her. Her DMs are open. It's how I contacted her. So go ahead and give it a shot. But thank you all very much. We all love you, and we're going to see you tomorrow. Canada Day, Saturday special, 10 hours. I'm going to get some rest. Love you all very much, and God bless.